Jennifer Drennan, our lovely librarian here at the United Irish Cultural Center. My name is Anne Cassidy Carew, and I am the Program Cultural Director, former president of the United Irish Cultural Center here in San Francisco. Today, we are joined by four lovely people from Roscommon, Sligo, and Dublin. We are speaking with Brigid Kavanagh. Brigid, if you'll do a quick little wave, and her two sons, Aidan and Declan. And if they'll give a little wave, Declan, there you are. And we have also Rachel Drury, who has been working with the family on creating this lovely, lovely book. So this is called In My Mind's Eye, Walking Amongst Ghosts. And it's a lovely, well, I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to let Declan and Aidan and Brigid tell us a little bit about how this book came to be. So if somebody wants to jump in there and let us know, like, you know, the story behind this book.
No, that.
Well, okay, will I do it?
Yeah, you do go for
okay.
that.
Yeah, just my mother has been writing stories for many years, and back in the early 1980s, she was a member of a writers' club in Dublin. She had written stories. My sister Mary had suggested that maybe she write some stories about her childhood and her upbringing in County Roscommon in the west of Ireland, and because she thought they were interesting. Of course, I suppose when you're directly involved with it, like my mother was, she was in that scenario. She probably didn't realize that the stories were interesting, but she started writing the stories and she tried to get them published I think at least once, and maybe more, and no publisher wanted them. So she was a busy woman, rearing a family and all the rest of it and getting on with life, so she just let it slip and thought it would never come to anything. But she kept writing, and she got published in, I don't know if you have over there in the States, if you'd have Ireland's Own, Ireland's Eye, if you've come across magazines like that. She got occasionally published in them, usually stories, memoirs, stories about growing up in the west of Ireland and immigration, coming back to Ireland, and stories about, she had a particular interest in people with Roscommon connection. Even St. Patrick's Roscommon Connections is a story about St. Patrick in it, and Oliver Goldsmith, people like that who had strong Roscommon connections. But I suppose to just fast forward then, myself and my brother Sean, who I believe is in the room there with Aidan and my mother, we were talking over a few beers one night about, wouldn't it be nice, while this is when Mommy was, what, 93, 94, wouldn't it be nice if we put all our stories together, as the expression I use was, under one roof, as it were. And we said, yeah, great. Sean said, great idea. I said, great idea. And we went off our own separate ways. And that was the end of it. It was just, well, drink talk, I suppose, you could say. It was nothing was ever going to come of it. But then just before the sort of COVID outbreaks, it hit us really here in March last year. I know it was around in February and that, but March was the first cases. And I was up just before that. My mother was in bed, and I just had my foot at the end of the bed, and I was looking under the bed, and we were chatting away. And my mother went, she likes quizzes. So she left the bedroom to go into the front room, and I was just poking around, and I came across stories. Some of them were actually, they were typed on an old typewriter, which now people under the age of what? Would people under the age of 30 know what a typewriter was? I don't know. I just started rooting through them, and I think by the time I was supposed to be tidying up the room, but about 3 hours later, the room was just a mess because I had stories all over the floor, and I wasn't doing the job I was supposed to be doing. But it was about that time I got back to Sean again. I said, "Do you remember we were talking about putting Mommy's stories together?" And Sean said he did. Yeah, now that I mentioned it, and so we decided that we would. This is without consulting her now. We decided that we'd put them together, maybe compile them, edit them, and we knew there was a lot of stories there. There was, but then at some stage we just said she'd be 95 next February, which is February gone by. It'd be nice to just have 95 stories on poems, one for every year of our life, and that was that was really how it came about. And once she realized that we were determined to do it, myself and Sean, she came on board. And the one thing she hadn't gotten the stories was she didn't like mentioning the first names maybe of people. But most of the people, if not all the people, had passed away. And we decided it would make it more interesting if the names were mentioned. It'd give a bit more life, as it were, to them, even though the people themselves were probably dead. So, and then we just, a few things, she added little bits of information to us just in conversation, and we put them in. And I mean, that was really it. But we deciding on it was probably about another 25, 30 stories that we didn't include. And some of them are good, but they just didn't. There's one story about a Father John Kavanagh, our surname, but it didn't fit into the whole folklore, Roscommon connection, upbringing thing. So we left that, although it was a good story. There was other stories like that and poems as well. So that was really it. I'll leave it at that for now. The story about getting it published and going to printers now is a different, that's a different kettle of fish. But we typed about 100,000 words between Sean and myself. I mean, because of the lockdown, we emailed them to each other, and he checked what I did and I checked what he did. Two of us were like school teacher, pupil, and vice versa, because he was checking me and I was checking him, and then we proofread and all the rest of them.
So you actually took the stories that were basically in a box under the bed and you typed them on a computer and
Word.
Every word, and then collected it. That is absolutely amazing, like amazing. And how long did that take? How long did?
Oh God, I would say it took months, say maybe 6 months, because it wasn't easy with the lockdown. That it was emailing, and then sometimes because we'd be on, I'd be on my laptop and Sean be on his laptop, and he'd be saying, "Look at this here. What do you think of that? Is that right, or is that?" And it was time consuming, and sometimes patience would run out maybe a little bit with us, and we just say, "I'll leave it to another day." And then we came across a few stories we hadn't. What happened at one stage was that two things happened. One was a memory stick that Mommy had went missing. Now, I don't know which it was she blames for it, but she had stories on that. But then we found some of those stories under the bed. But then on another occasion, I think she got a phone call and saying that unless she paid so much money, I don't know, was it from Asia or someplace? I'm not sure now, but saying that unless she paid so much money that her computer would be hacked and she'd lose all the information on it. And obviously she wasn't going to be blackmailed, and she didn't pay it, so she lost more stories. But again, I think we got some of them back, and Sean actually talked her through a few stories as well, and he typed some stories but I know there Mommy to explain better. I know there were more, but there would have been more stories. But I thought there are 320 pages in the book, and I thought that when I gave it to the printers, there would be about 200. But the printers did it. I mean, they were good quality printers, and they didn't sort of squash anything in, and it ended up at 320 pages. I didn't realize that. Had we been thinking at the time, even the cost of postage or mailing to the States, for example, and we've mailed maybe, I don't know, about 40, I'd say, to America at this stage. It's a lot more because the book it's very heavy. So that was another thing. Had we our business caps on, which we hadn't, we would have made it a lighter book or smaller book, or had a volume 2 or something like that. But so that's the story. I've talked enough now. So back to you.
So I'd love to hear Brigid's thoughts and version of the whole putting all of the stories together. Will you chat about that a little bit, Brigid?
Well, when I realized that they were doing this, I couldn't believe it, because I said, who's going to buy this book? Because in 1983, when I first wrote those stories, a lot of them, before I joined the writing class later on in 1985, I thought, who's going to be interested? And when I sent them to a couple of publishers, they said, well, you'd be better trying magazines, the articles in magazines, because they said, who'd buy the book anyway? And then someone else came along and she had great success with those stories. And so I realized I didn't have an agent. I had made a big mistake. I was very naive. I didn't understand you have to have an agent really to get your book published and all that. So I was so surprised that I thought that they were going at a grave loss through publishing. And I'm so thrilled that they have been successful and that, you know, that the book is very popular, and which I didn't expect it to. And I have been writing since then. I joined the writers class in '85. It's opened up in Dundrum, where I live, and I only finished with it last year because I got very painful ankles and I wasn't able to keep going. I had to use a walking cane and all that. So that's what made me give up. And then this Chinese virus finished it, you know. The classes were finished anyway because of the virus. So and then our tutor in the class was very, very good, Anya Miller. She used to encourage us by giving us a name of a person and an occupation and a purpose. And she'd ask us to write about that and write a short story about that. So anyway, that was it. I'm still surprised that they got this published. And it must have been a lot of hard work for them.
Well, it's absolutely brilliant. I started to read it and I absolutely am in love with it. You do an amazing job with describing, like, you know, going back to what we were talking about before we started, you know, about Mungkan Magan, the idea that your description of things are so beautiful. And so you if you've never been there, you can see it in your eye. And you say it in my mind's eye. It's a perfect title because the way that you describe things, you can see it in your mind's eye. You really can. You do it justice. You do Ireland justice in the sense of how beautifully you describe it. You have a love for it. And
I think also that I could always write better than I could speak. I felt I was not good at it. I wasn't articulate enough to describe something. But if I wrote, I could. And like when I was going to school, and I was only about 12 or 13, and the nuns, and I went to the Sisters of Mercy, and there was a brilliant nun. She encouraged us all in literature, to read good literature. And she said to me, "You'll be an author one day." But of course, I totally got on with life and forgot all about it. And now I can't believe that my sons had such confidence in my article. Like Aidan as well is involved, and Kevin. They all got involved then when the people started looking for the books. They have, they've all been selling and promoting the books. So all my family, I have 6 children, one girl and 5 boys, and they've all been very good. But Aidan and Sean and Declan, they were the ones mainly interested.
So yeah, I mean, again, everybody has to read. If you want to go back to the way Ireland was back in the day, you describe it so beautifully. It's funny. My mom is from Sligo, like I mentioned earlier, and she's from the Ox Mountains. And my aunt had a bar. Yeah, my aunt had a bar in Boyle.
Oh, that's what's common, Boyle.
Yeah, they had a bar.
I think some townlands are in Sligo. Some of the townlands are in Sligo.
Yeah. And so you write it in such a way that sometimes I can close my eyes and the same kind of descriptions of your growing up would be similar to my mom's stories, you know? So for me, it holds a really kind of special place. This is my grandparents' house where my mom was born.
I was wondering about that house. I was wondering when I saw it there. Yeah.
There you go. How is that happening, ma'am? She's in 2 places at once.
That was a real farmer's house. That was a farmer's house. That was common among the ordinary farmers, smaller farmers.
So I got to stay in this house when I was younger. So my first time to Ireland was in 1973. And so I think you said you moved to Dublin. So you moved from Roscommon.
49.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved to this actual house we're in now in 1973.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
I bought this house in 73. Yeah.
Wonderful. So it sounds like there was probably hundreds of stories that you could have put into this book, and it could have been kind of a Harry Potter, like 4 books. Maybe there'll be a second, right? I mean, if you still have more.
Well, I don't know about enough. I wouldn't have another 95, but I do have memories of others. But I suppose they were the main ones. But because 95, it was such a good idea to have 95, and then a poem in each chapter. And I was never down as a poet, but I did it when we were asked to do it in the class. You know, the tutor, she would tell us her favorite form of writing is poetry. She's had a few books published, but I didn't think I was any use as a poet. But when she asked us to do it, I did it. And they were all right, the poems.
So speaking of poetry, will you read one of your poetry, one of your pieces of poetry for us?
Oh yes, I would. Please.
So I'm going to have to move this. Yeah. Funny you were saying poetry is not your thing, ma'am, but no. This is what you're going to read for us.
Well, I love poetry in school, but that was by real poets, not me. Now, I read this about the Ramblers. Now, visitors into houses were called Ramblers in Roscommon. And this is about the Ramblers that came to our house at night. They just walked in. Now, God save all here, the Rambler calls. As lifting the latch, he steps right in. God save you kindly, answer all. Draw up a chair to the gathering. My father, seated by the open fire, with straw wisp cleans his old pipe shank. Cuts with a penknife the mick-bequaid tobacco. Presses down and lights with a turf spark. He tells of heroes long since dead, as he sits in the pungent haze, with ghosts, old customs, and fairy folk. He sets our listening hearts ablaze. My mother from the oven pot lifts and cools the last soda cake of day, takes the singing kettle from the cricket hob, heats the pot and wets the tea. We never said make the tea, we said wet the tea. Cups of tea and buttered cuts of bread she hands to those around the hearth. May God increase your store, an elder prays. May you see not want, nor our food a dearth. Good night, Godspeed, safe home we call. Then the rosary aloud is said. The fire is raked, the lamp is quenched. With lighted candles, we're off to bed. That's it. It's in the book.
Bravo!
It's in the book. It's not. That's not from the next book. That's from this book.
The Ramblers. We call them the Ramblers.
The Ramblers. I love it. So Declan and Aidan, do you guys have a story that, or a snippet from the book that might be one of your favorites, or just something else that you might want to read, or that you think Mom would want to read? Because again, I think just to give people some examples of, that was a beautiful example of the description of how she writes. But I'm just wondering if Declan or Aidan, you have one that you might want to share.
Do you want to go, Declan, or will I?
No, you go, Aidan. You go.
So how long do we have? Okay, I was going to do one that's about 2 pages long. If that's all right, you just tell me when to stop.
Yes, absolutely.
So I hope you don't mind. I'm reading this story for now, man.
Oh no, I'm delighted you are.
So this is called The American Exile. So I'll just get my glasses.
This is a mystery story.
So maybe Ma'am could give us a background to it.
Yes.
No, we spent the summer holidays in my husband's place in Galway. They were farmers as well in Turlinmore, between Turlinmore and Athenry, of the famous town Athenry. And one summer when we were down for the races usually at the end of July, the Galway races. And when we got there, my brother-in-law said, he began to talk about this Yank who had arrived And he said, oh, his grandmother's name was, the man who came, the grandmother's name was Diviny, and the father's name was John Kavanagh. So then I said, oh, that's your father's name. That's there is. But they hadn't heard about her. And then he told that she went to America. Now she must have had someone to claim her because America wouldn't take people that weren't sponsored, you know. You had to have someone who would take you into the country, get you a job, set you up so that there was no expense on the state. And she went to America in 1890, and she had no English whatsoever, because at that period, that area, East Galway, was Irish speaking, as my father-in-law was. And so he said, so, but then they never spoke of her or heard of her until he came home, and he said his name was Joe O'Brien, and that this sister of the grandfather up there was, she was, you know, she was dead by this stage. But we were trying to find out the mystery because he must have given them the address on a cigarette packet, which my brother-in-law would have in his pocket. And anyway, it was lost. And when my husband's cousin, Mary Keane, heard about this, she happened to be on holiday, unfortunately, or she would have got to the root of the matter. But the men obviously weren't. And she says, oh, those men, you know, she was very annoyed that they didn't find out everything about this aunt, you know, that had gone to America. But they were extremely interested. So
that's the back.
that's it.
Okay.
We never heard since.
So will I go into it? So it's called The American Exile, and stop me if you need to at any point. It's 2 pages long. So on a scorching day in July of 1984, 2 farmer brothers, John and Tom, were making cocks of hay in a field when a strange event happened. Pausing to remove their straw hats to wipe away the sweat from their brows, they saw a man dressed in unusual garb rushing towards them. He didn't look like a neighbour who would be in working clothes, nor had he the distinctive look of a tinker who would be on the lookout for anything they didn't want. They paused to allow the man to approach. To their astonishment, he ran the last few steps and threw his arms around the elder, exclaiming, "Delighted to meet you at last, cousin. I am Joe O'Brien, your cousin from Boston, USA." To begin with, this hugging was very strange behaviour indeed, not done, especially amongst farmers who greeted each other with a handshake. This cousin's business, cousin, what's he on about? Is he a lunatic escaped from Ballinasloe Asylum? The brothers looked at each other in perplexity. Better humour him anyway, and see what more he has to say. I am sure I am your cousin, once removed, I think you call it. My grandmother, your paternal Aunt Mary, left Galway in 1890. She was only 16 when she took the boat to Boston. Hold on there now, John interrupted. No paternal aunt of ours went to America. My father had only one brother and sister, and both lived, married, and died here, God rest their souls. You are mistaken, cousin. She was the eldest of her family. Her mother was widowed at an early age, her father dying as a result of an accident with a horse. If all this is true, how is it that we haven't heard about that aunt? Cannot help you there, pal. My granny didn't speak much about her past. All she told us is that she was only 16 when she left Ireland, that she was a Gaelic speaker, knew no English then, as this area was all Gaelic speaking. They began to pay more attention to what the man was saying. Their father had been a Gaelic speaker. He and his brother, who had lived locally, conversed only in Irish every time they were together, it being their first language. The only job she could get was as a domestic worker because she had no qualifications, he went on. She had to go to night school to learn English. Tuition, which she paid for from meagre wages when her day's work was done. No one was allowed into the States unless they were claimed or sponsored by a citizen who would guarantee that the immigrant would be looked after by a sponsor instead of being a burden on public finances. Concealing any remaining doubts they harboured concerning this man's identity, they decided to secure the cocks of hay before finishing work, in case the weather broke next day. Raking could be delayed for later. In heat like this, there was a likelihood of thunder and lightning followed by heavy rain, which would set them back. Joe took a fork and soon got the hang of gathering the remaining hay into a cock. Taking him to the farmhouse, they offered him tea, some bread and cold bacon, and scraps of cooked chicken from a takeaway in the pub that night before. In a bachelor household, the fridge wasn't overloaded. Joe took a walk around the birthplace of his grandmother, to which several improvements had been made during the almost 100 years since she had left there, never to return. Their father had built a better house decades ago and improved the quality of the land by annual top dressing and husbandry. The brothers decided to take him to their cousin, who owned Egan's public house a few miles away. He too expressed skepticism when he heard the story, though he didn't convey that to the stranger, but helped to entertain him hospitably. They parted on friendly terms, Joe stating that his sister would be coming to Ireland the following year. Apparently, he wrote down his address on a cigarette packet, but it seemed that it got pulled out carelessly from John's trouser pocket, lost forever. When female members of the family heard the story, one cousin in particular, Mary, who was away on holiday at the time, was very upset, annoyed at the cavalier behaviour they had displayed. How could they have behaved like that? And to lose his address, particularly those men. They never heard from him again, much to the regret of other family members. Some years later, the brother's nephew, Porrick, while passing through Boston, put an advert in the Boston Globe seeking him out, but got no response. Perhaps Joe had died by then, but that too only adds to the mystery. So that's the story of the American Exile.
Very strange, yes.
Great story.
Wow.
That's true.
It's a story of
And true.
opportunity. An opportunity to miss. We've ancestry DNA now, I don't know, the man is probably dead, but the ancestry, the DNA thing now is fantastic, but that was just lost back then, lost.
Yeah.
It's a pity.
Yeah.
She was born, this Mary now that went to USA, she was born in March 1874, whereas her brother, they were very young, her brother was born in 75. And then the other two, the sister and brother that married and settled quite near them, they were much younger. So I mean, it's not surprising that, but it was strange that the grandfather didn't hear for. He was next in line. He would be 48 in that time, 84. So. Anyway.
We never found out why she went to America.
No,
The
we
circuit,
never
she was
found out.
16. It was mysterious. We don't know why she went. It was a shame that we never got to the bottom of it. You
Yeah.
never know. With ancestry, as I said, we might meet some ancestor of his, or
Are you
some
based?
relative of his, I should say.
They're not based in Boston, are you?
But we're San Francisco.
You are?
San Francisco, man.
Yes,
They're
you're
on the
on
west-
the West
They're
Coast.
the West Coast.
Yeah, we're 6,000 miles away from you, not 3.
And
Yeah.
when you think of it, she had to go on that boat. It took so many weeks. And I
Yeah.
think you had to bring your food with you.
Right.
So she obviously traveled with someone else, with a cousin, but we don't know.
Well, I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I can't imagine today having her get on a ship and go, 3,000 miles on a ship. I mean, total side story. My grandmother, so my dad's mom, 6 of them immigrated the same week in 1958. 4 of them went to America and 2 of them went to England. I can't even imagine. I have 2 kids that are going off to college in September, and there's so many ways for me to see them and talk to them, but I can't even imagine, in the 1950s, you didn't know when you were going to talk to the person again or see them again, and so.
Well, I think children reared on a farm were very independent. I mean, I left home when I was 18 too. And there were no phones or any way of communication except by
Right.
letter. So you wouldn't see anyone until you came home the following year, So you had no communication with home except through letter.
Yeah.
Right?
Here in the library, we have a 5-volume edition of adverts that were placed in the Boston area in the in the 1800s, and it's called Looking for Lost Friends, and it's from the paper's archives and all the adverts of the different Irish that would place, looking, what somebody had come, not been able to, for whatever reason, communicate with the family back home. Somebody else came later and started advertising and looking for them, and you read some of them and it's just, you want to know the rest of the story, and it's kind of heartbreaking to not know.
Well, it's very sad that, and the fact that she also was trying to grasp another language, that, this was difficult for her to, write back home and all.
Well, it was one of the reasons for the death of the almost death of the Irish language post-famine, when people said, why bring our children up speaking Gaelic or speaking Irish when, they're going to need English whether they go to America, Britain or Australia, they're going to need English. So that was a big blow for the Irish language, because people saw it as, they associated it with hunger, first of all, and then there was no point in bringing them up through Irish when they'd have to learn English anyway. That was...
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about with Mankan Magan, our last conversation last week, was here in San Francisco, the Clan Gael, I may not be saying it.
Clan Gael, yeah, good.
Yeah. So they were trying to revive the Irish culture in the early 1900s, especially here in America, because so many, there was so much of the diaspora that had spread out. And in San Francisco, in the early 1900s, they got the Irish language in the curriculum of the Catholic schools in San Francisco. Now think about that. That is pretty amazing when you think about that they had that much of an influence on the school curriculum and brought in the Irish language, and they were trying to, promote music and language and art and dancing. And so I found that so fascinating, because who would have thought? Who would have thought here especially in California, 6,000 miles away from Ireland, that they would have incorporated that. So super fascinating.
And we have flyers here in the library from some of those social events, and it'll, give the advertisement on the front and how to get to the location, Shell Mound Park, which is over in what is now Emeryville. But on the back, it lists all the events, and it includes singing and dancing and hurling and football, Gaelic football, and all of these things that they were encouraging people to join into. And it's wonderful to see that now. And Mankan mentioned how, especially the diaspora had a completely different take on the use of and preservation of the Irish language than those who got left behind.
Yeah.
When we were told that the Celtic language, one of the Irish language is part of the Celtic language, that's much older than English. And I was surprised when I saw my daughter was going to school. She said, I used to ask her out her Latin, she was learning Latin, as they all did at that time. And I thought all the words that came from Latin, like agricola, and there were, several other words in English were taken from Latin. So,
yeah,
it was a mixed up language, taken from several languages, I think.
So Bridget, I have to ask you, how are you able, your memory seems absolutely amazing, like absolutely. How did you keep it? You're able to remember things in detail. How are you able to do that? What's your secret?
I have no idea, but I read somewhere way back that I was born, now some people have laughed at this, and maybe you will laugh as well, and maybe I'd laugh myself, but that people born under the sign Aquarius have very good memories. And strangely enough, my sister also, who was the same sign, had a very good memory. Now, one of my sons, he said that he's been telling people that the reason that I have such a good memory is that, or that I lived so long, is that I didn't drink or smoke in my life. So, I mean, I wasn't wild. Because I didn't fancy Joan either, you know. Yeah.
So, okay, maybe that's
Just one of the amazing
I don't know.
Go ahead.
one of the
Jack.
amazing things about my mother is the fact that she left Roscommon to go to England when she was 18, well, almost 19, but 18, and the memory, her power of recall for those, from whenever her first memories were when she was 3 or 4 maybe, so her power of recall for those, say, 14, 15 years is incredible. And it's just, I can't believe, I couldn't even, I can't remember things like when in that detail from when I was that young. No way could I. And she's every detail, how, mending boots, and how just how everything her mother did, obviously everything my mother's mother did, our grandmother did, obviously she watched very carefully and she learned. Whereas nowadays children would just say, sure, what the hell, I can get somebody else to do that, or buy a new pair or something like that. But
well, that's why I think the present society is very wasteful.
But your power of recall, Mammy, is incredible. This is what from the feedback we've been getting is just people can't get over that. That she's so descriptive, and they can't. How does she remember that? That's what people are saying to us. How can she remember all that? For
I saw life through rose-colored spectacles. Maybe you should use that. My sister, that I saw life through rose-colored spectacles. I don't.
Plus, yeah, you seem to have had a very happy childhood.
Yeah,
which is great also.
Yeah.
I think also, just if I can go in there, in the schools as well, you spoke about the sisters and the nuns.
Oh, the nuns were wonderful.
And the way that it used to be wrote, kind of what would be kind of education would go against now. The method of learning was just learning stuff
by rote.
And so Mammy can quote off pages and pages of poetry.
Of all poetry.
Just like if you asked her just to start, she could start quoting just poetry. Like, I don't know how, like, this is stuff that you would have learned, like, that you would have learned over 80 years ago. You can just start rhyming off stuff now.
And the death of Owen O'Neill and all these, there were great in class, and it was, we took great pleasure in learning that poetry and saying it, reciting it.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I can't remember anything. So I'm going to start to, and I wanted to also say, so I'm 52. You've given me hope to write my book, because I wanted to write my book. And I still have 40 years to do it. So
you got loads of time. Yeah,
I got tons of time. Here I thought I was running out of time, and you've given me hope to say, you know what? I got plenty of time.
You see, you have a very busy mind. When my husband was alive, he often said to me, if I forgot something now, which I did sometimes, he said, when I said, oh, I forgot, what's wrong with me? Because I'd ask him. And he said, you have too much in your head. And at the time, it was later when now I have more time for thinking as well.
And would you say that your writing classes really helped you? Like, would you say that that was a big part of how these stories really came out? The writing classes really did that for you?
I always felt I was a bit inarticulate, and I was better at writing it down.
Yeah.
Well, you get more time to write it down than you do when you're saying it at the time, don't you?
And Anne's asking about the classes, if you felt the writers' classes.
Oh, the writers, yes. And all through the years, it was a voluntary group that was set up in Dundrum. And they set up classes of every distinction. So we were lucky we moved to Dundrum at that time. And because it was great when people were retired and they needed something to do. They had these classes. Well, once a week, or if you wanted to take up several classes, you could at a reasonable fee.
Well, it definitely kept your mind going, right? It kept your mind challenged, and it gave you opportunity to capture these beautiful stories. And I bet you at the time, I mean, it sounded like at the time you were hoping that something would have been published back then, but here you are at 95.
Well, I'd given up. I wasn't thinking it's been published now, I can tell you. No, I did hope, but I was naive. I didn't know about getting an agent, and I didn't know about put down, she'd get all these refusals that come back from publishers. I had a few of them, but I think they've disappeared. A few of what you call rejects.
That's the thing.
I should write, send them into magazines, individual articles, rather than expecting to publish a book. So anyway, I was lying to go.
There was no fear of rejection, Mommy, because it was self-published this time. So
unless you could reject your own publication.
Yeah, it was self-published. So you couldn't be unless myself and Sean said they're not good enough, and we knew they were good enough. But that was the thing. On when the book came out first, the story was like, so the stuff that was in the media was 95-year-old woman has first book out at 95 years of age, and what a remarkable achievement it was, and that was great. But then the reason it probably sold after that, or became popular after that, was when people actually read the book and read the stories. They said, yeah, these are fairly good stories as well. It's not just the fact that she's 95 and how remarkable that is, but there was a bit of substance to the stories as well, and that's just because of our power of recall, I think. And it struck a chord with people, people who weren't from Roscommon, who hadn't had their experience, and it's just people in all over Ireland and in the UK and in the US and a few to Australia. It just struck a chord with people who would never have known anything about Mammy or her upbringing.
Yes, there was one great story of one woman. Is it Mary Daly? Was that her name, Declan?
Yeah.
Mammy ended up a few weeks ago. She ended up speaking to this woman, Mary Daly, who from 19. And the last time she found out about Mam, she found out about the book, and then Declan ended up contacting Declan, and then herself. Her name is Mary Daly. The last time she ended up having a conversation with my mum, because she was delighted to read the book. The last time they'd spoken to each other was in 1942 on a day out, on a picnic day out organised by the Legion of Mary. Yeah. And there's a photo to prove it. Declan has a photo of it. She's on one side of the photo, Mary Daly is, and my mum's on the other side of the photo. It's mad. 1942, and the way afterwards, I got the background information. My mum was so casual about it. Oh, I said, so when was the last time you spoke? Oh, 1942. I spoke.
I never saw a lot of those after I left home, because a lot of these people that I went to school with immigrated, and there were only a few that I did see when I went down to Roscommon again. Only a couple really, and the rest were gone, or wherever they went. I lost touch. So to America, I suppose. But my best friend went to New York, but she's dead now a few years. Yeah.
So you may end up getting more of the story about the great aunt that immigrated, at 16. That story may come, like you may get the info because of this book. People are doing this DNA thing and the 23andMe, and so people are connecting in different ways. And that may happen because of the stories that were written and shared in this book.
I was thinking that if somebody reads this and says, oh, wait, I heard that from my great uncle.
Right.
Hopefully they'll follow up with you.
Yeah, we hope so.
And then you'll have to tell us.
His family, even if he is dead and his family are there, they may not be interested. Like, it's usually the second generation that have an interest in Irish heritage. Usually the first, like my uncles went to American aunts, and it was their family, some of them came back. Because I think a lot of them remember poverty. And, the things weren't so good when they left. And that's why often it's their families that want to come back and get their roots. Because my mother's old home, she regularly now, over the years when we spent summers in Roscommon, in her house, my mother's house, visitors would arrive, cousins from the States, different parts, and they were children of people who had immigrated. And there were a lot of them were attorneys. A lot of them went for law, don't they? So
interesting. So we're at at about 12 minutes to 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
I know it's getting late there. I wanted to see if there is anybody that's with us today that had a question for Bridget or Aiden or Declan. And if you want to put it into the chat.
Yeah. I was gonna say Lynn had raised her hand early on, so I wanted to make sure we acknowledged her and got her question in.
Oh, Bridget, you mentioned that your father-in-law only spoke Irish. Did you speak Irish as well?
Well, as a matter of fact, we went to the convent of Mercy Strokestown. And at that time, I think the country was more nationalist because the nuns in the convent were not very nationalist. They even had a picture up on the wall called Múscail do Misneach a Banbar, because Ireland was called the Banbar at one stage way back. So we were taught through Irish, except English subject. So we were taught Irish. So I was never too good at speaking it, but I was good at writing it and grammar and all that. So we did, yeah. And but now you see, in the meantime, they changed the spelling. We had the punks and the shavas. I don't know if you know what they are. Whereas
Yeah,
now,
I'm studying Irish, so yeah.
they have H's. They put an H down instead of a punk or a shava. And I don't like the new way of spelling, or that way of spelling, because I'm not used to it. I got the punk and shava spelling in my time.
Yeah,
And
I
still
see
remember
some of
Irish.
I see some of the books in the old, I'm studying Irish. But when
Yeah.
I see the old style that you learned, I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm
Well,
not
was
used to the letters. Yeah.
they anglicized it, Lynn. They anglicized it. They took away the shavio and the punk to make it more accessible and easier for English speakers to pick up. That's the reason. This was, I think, during the 1930s and 40s. This happened. Just to make it more. I'm an Irish speaker now, but I mean, there's not. The Irish language has experienced a big revival in the last 20 years. There are places called Gaelscoil now, like Irish speaking schools, where and the Gaelic areas where native speakers live, they are actually getting smaller. And in urban areas where these Irish speaking schools are, like Gaelscoil, the Irish is picking up big time, which is fantastic. It's great that we speak our own language. That we can, and you can learn, children especially adults, but children probably pick up more bilingual, trilingual, they can, get 4 or 5 languages, no problem. So 2 shouldn't be a problem, Irish and English.
But Declan is an Irish speaker. Declan, he was teaching Irish. Declan.
Were any of the stories written in Irish?
No, and I felt a bit guilty about that. No, I get mixed up, confused now between dish now, which means you. We used to spell that D-U-I-T, and the dot on the sheva or the punk on the T, whereas it's spelled D-U-I-T-H now. So I've been very mixed up with between the two spellings. But no, I didn't. So I could have put a poem in Irish in it. I would. Yeah. That's all.
That's in the second book.
Yeah, I was gonna say the next edition.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
There's an expression, Lynn, called Tir gan shanga, tir gan anum.
Yeah.
And it means a country without a language is a country without a soul.
Soul, yeah.
So
Wow.
it's a good expression. You are what you
my grandparents emigrated from Ireland, so I kind of feel like my learning is taken back.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Fair play to you.
And one last question: where in the States can we get this book? I would like to.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
Rachel Drury was, I don't know if she's still there. She's muted anyway at the moment, as far as I can see. She helped us out when we didn't expect, to be quite honest about this, when myself and Sean brought this book out just to get Mammy's stories into one book. We didn't think of what was going to happen afterwards. We thought we'd sell, maybe we'd give away some to friends and relatives, and we would maybe sell 50 books, maybe, if we were lucky. We didn't bring it out as a commercial operation, but when the book was out about maybe a week or less, maybe, and Rachel Drury contacted us, and she has a website called buythebook.ie, very simple, buythebook.ie, and that has helped us because people had difficulties with IBAN numbers and were sending us checks or phoning us up, and so the buythebook.ie is it's a very quick, very simple way. Now we may, if if the needs arise, we may do something else on top of that, but we'll be shipping them from Ireland through Rachel's website. As I said, buythebook.ie. It's a very simple way. It's on Facebook. It's just check out Buy the Book itself. It's on. If you check out the website, just in my mind's eye, Walking Amongst Ghosts, you get it as well. But that's where at the moment we're shipping it. Now, if there was a need for anything else, Lynn, maybe we cross that bridge if we come to it.
Rachel?
There.
Yeah.
There's Rachel. Oh, Rachel's back. Yeah.
So I put the web address in the
Thank
chat.
you.
Rachel, did I write it correctly? Or
Yeah,
type it correctly?
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Welcome.
Are you so you are responsible then for being a part of the book, i.e. Selling the books through that, so that allows it to go around the world, really, right, at this point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I had seen Brigid on the news, and I just loved the story so much, and I loved that she had done what she did. Just such a lovely story, because there's been a lot of doom and gloom in Ireland, and there's been a lot of negative news, and this was just such an uplifting story. And it was a story of it's never too late to achieve your dream. And I just loved it. And I loved the way her sons spoke about her as well, and that it was a family project, and that they helped her achieve, her dream. So I just reached out to Declan, because I had just done my own book as well, and I thought that we could work together and kind of help each other, because we were both self-published, and there's so much to learn. And we definitely have had such a good working relationship, and he's helped me and I've helped him. And we just, by coming together, we've been stronger in, getting our books out there, making contacts, doing all that kind of stuff that comes with being self-published. So we're both, Declan's responsible for shipping the books. The website just takes the orders in, and as they come in, Declan gets them. So I've really enjoyed just being part of it, because from the moment I saw Brigid on the TV, I just thought she was an amazing lady, and she really is an inspiration. And I hope she knows that. She is quite modest, but her writing is fantastic. To have that many stories, and such a variety of stories as well. And I just felt like, part of me felt as well that there was a real market for the book with Irish Americans, because it gives them a piece of Ireland, and it gives them, all these fantastic stories captured in such a fantastic way. And my own granny used to read that magazine every week, Ireland's Own, which is where where Brigid wrote for. So I always think of my own granny, how she would have loved this book, to have all the stories in one place. So we really do want to kind of, reach out to Irish Americans and, a wider audience, to let them know this book is, is brilliant. And, at a time when, Irish Americans and Americans can't get to Ireland, we can send them a piece of us through the book. Yeah.
Well said. Absolutely well said. And what you have to tell us what the name of your book is.
Oh, my book is called Powered to Fall, Empowered to Rise. Bit of a mouthful, but yeah, that it's a different book. Again, it's nonfiction. It's a much shorter book. I had the opposite problem of Declan. My book I couldn't believe how small it was when it actually printed, but it's perfect for my first book. I just wanted to share some of the stories, or some of the things I learned in my own life. But it's been a really good, opportunity to work with Declan, and I just love the book. I love the story, and I really hope that, that through doing this interview, thank you so much for having us on. you know, that we're able to kind of share the story to a wider audience. So that's been brilliant.
Well, we're hoping that we'll send out a reminder and we'll put the connection to the, you know, where people can get the book, because you have summarized it beautifully. Brigid is definitely an inspiration. I told you now I'm inspired to pursue my book writing, and then I have
more years.
I'll let you know. I'll keep you guys posted. You know, we all have a story to write, and we all have a story. We have stories that could be shared. You know, there's wisdom that Brigid shared with us in this book. And I think, Rachel, you hit it on the head when you said, this is a hopeful book. Like, it provides, you know, a lighthearted connection to Ireland, right? And we did need that through COVID, especially you guys in Ireland, man. You guys were really, you had, like, we were, you know, in shutdown, but it wasn't like what you had, you know, like not being able to cross into county lines and not, you know, and everything really shut down. We were fortunate that we could take our business, you know, bars and restaurants, well, mostly restaurants could take their business outside. So definitely through this book, what a lovely, you know, the saying, when you have lemons, make lemonade, right? And you definitely did that with this beautiful collection of 95 stories. I am honored to be on here with you all, and I am so grateful that you took the time to share your story with us here on the West Coast in San Francisco. And I do hope when I do get to Ireland next year that I can come and visit and just say, how are you? Good to see you in person, and, you know, keep this relationship going and talk about again, it sounds like there's a lot of other stories that could come out that maybe there's another one, who knows? So that means more typing, Declan and Sean, but
the hands aren't able for it anymore.
But it'd be worth it.
I just wanted to say thank you all so very much. We were honored to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Anne and Jennifer, thanks a million. It was great talking to both of you. And
thank you.
So thanks very much.
Well, we're so grateful to have you, and that you were willing to stay up and talk with us, because it is not daytime there now.
That library sounds fascinating.
10 o'clock at night. You're 10 o'clock. What time are you there?
It's just gone to.
It's now 2
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So lovely conversation. If there's anybody that has any final comment or question, and otherwise we are.
I'll just say Guru Magav, one may on ton of us. I guess I'm Exul Gomor Lesh Elev.
Kahintuk, Wintanava.
And Lynn, if you make it out here to the library when we're able to have patrons in again, we have over 500 books in the Irish language, some published before several published before 1930, and others more contemporary, so we can make you a reading appointment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much to everybody.
What an
Thanks,
honor.
everyone.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, Mom. Bye. Bye.
Okay, we'll leave you with the cover image.
Bye. Say goodbye, Salam.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Very long.